session. And before starting today's session, let me ask you one question. Let us say, you are working in a company, and there is very good working environment, very neat office, very hygienic place. You have good canteen facility, and whatever is required, like very basically good working environment you have. So, will that motivate you? Yes or no? You can put it in the chat. So,
Yes, sir.
you are in a working in a company, yeah. So, will that motivate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, most of the answers I am getting is yes. Let us say you are in some other company, and the kind of work is same. There is no difference in the work. Let's say you are working on the latest technology, data science, or whatever you wish for. You are working in a company, but the working conditions are not good. Let's say not a very good hygienic place, not a good canteen. Will it demotivate you? Yes or no? Will it demotivate? My question is, will it demotivate? Anybody? Like, okay, you can unmute and say yes or no. Will your work wise there is no problem? Very good work you got, but working environment is not. I won't say like very bad, not so good. Will it demotivate you?
So it will not demotivate, but like no interest will be generated.
Very good. Good, Akshata. Good, Sathya. Okay. Actually, those are called as a yes. Depends. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Pradeep, what happens is normally when you are in a certain environment, say, like there are certain things which will not motivate you. Okay, most of the people you said yes, it is not. The studies have revealed that some things are there which will not motivate if they are present. Okay, like one example is a working environment. It will not motivate if they are present, but they will be like a very required thing. Their absence will create a lot of noise or trouble. So absence will create a problem, but their presence may not be significantly. It will add to the motivation. Those are called as a hygienic factor. So hygienic factor are required wherever you are there. We have to make sure that hygienic factor are present. So even in when you come to the college, right, the certain things what will motivate you to attend the class, listen to the lectures, and go through all the academic related things. Good college facility, buses, good classroom, clean environment, it is required. Okay, that may not motivate. So your motivational factors would be different, right? So similarly, every environment needs a minimum required environmental aspects. Those are called as a hygienic factors. They will not motivate to a great extent, but their absence will create a problem. Okay. So last class we were looking into the administrative management contributions and its limitations. We'll continue with that. Okay, both Taylor. So Taylor is he's a father of scientific management, and Foyle is the father of administrative management. Both essentially had the same goal of increasing the production, and Foyle's principle met with widespread acceptance among writers on management and among managers themselves. The real explosion in the number of principle of management came with the Colonel Erwick, a distinguished executive and management consultant in UK. So that is a result of the administrative management, and he also wrote a book, The Elements of Administration. Okay, and he tried to assemble the concepts of all the legendary management practitioners like Taylor, Fayal, Mooney, etc. And he advocated certain principles. Number one is there should be clear line of authority, as in the military, from the top management down to the lowest employment. So authority, line of authority, like there should be well established what person, authority is like what he can do or what he cannot do. Okay, as a manager, okay, what I am allowed to do, so that is called as authority. So whenever you are in certain position, uh, what you can do, what you cannot do, is basically that is your authority. He mentioned it should be very clear. The authority and responsibility of each employee should be communicated to him in writing. So normally, like when you get a job offer, you will have, normally they don't specify the authority, they will specify the responsibility, what you are responsible for. And what he said is like even the authority. If you are joining at a very higher level, like say director or like a CEO, there they will have a well-defined authority, because it should not conflict when you are working. It should not conflict with the other aspects of the organization. So they will clear what is the authority of that particular position. Each individual should perform one function only. So according to Arvik, so only each individual should perform only one function, because he can give his complete attention to that particular function. The span of control of a manager should never exceed 6. So span of control means how many people he can manage. So he said like there should be maximum of 6 people for a manager. Authority can be delegated but not responsibility. Authority, suppose if you are authorized, for example, like say in our college scenario, we can consider we have like let us say a certain head of the department, he is not available on particular day, he will delegate his authority. Okay, he will delegate his authority to some person for a very short period, because there are certain things that will be required to continuously, irrespective of whether person is available or not. So that time what we have to do is we can delegate that work to other person, but the responsibility will lie with the whoever is the person who is holding on to that particular position. Okay, drawing inspiration from Payal, new school of thought known as the management process school came into existence. Harold Kuhns. Harold Kuhns is also one of the very famous management practitioner. Similarly, Donnell, okay, Cyril O'Donnell. So they started this particular school based on the inspiration from Fayal. They believe that the management is a dynamic process of performing the functions of planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. So you have to pay attention for dynamic process. Nowhere we are saying it is a static process. So once you define, let's say for planning, so you define certain process. That is not static. It will remain like that, maybe for a certain period, but eventually it will keep on changing. So that's why they say all this staffing, all these things are dynamic. For example, now you can consider the staffing. So staffing now, with the current situation of COVID, you can see that staffing predominantly it is happening online. Okay, earlier there used to be face to face and things like that. Now 90% of the positions are getting filled only through online. They are using all the online tools to make sure that all the aspects of the selection is taken care, but it is happening through online. So earlier they used to come to the campus. Now many of our placement activities that are happening online today is also, there is a HP drive for your seniors, that's going to happen online only. Okay, everything is online. So the management things will keep on changing. The processes, these processes will change according to the challenges that we encounter. Now the challenge is COVID-19, everything is like online. So that is how the management process will change. Managers, whether they are managing directors or supervisors, perform the same function of planning control, although the degree of complexity may differ. So what different levels of managers, like managing director or supervisor, they will be performing these functions. Maybe the degree to which they are doing it will differ. If he is at a very top level, he will be more focused on certain aspects, like larger plans, like a long-term plans. And if you are at the lower level of the management, you will be working mostly on the short-term plans. So the degree will differ, but all the managers will be performing such activities. Similarly, management functions are not confined to business enterprises, but also are applicable to all organizations wherever the group effort is involved. Management theory as a body of knowledge is not a culture bound, but it is transferable from one environment to another. So management is not only restricted to the business. Wherever we have a group of people, okay, we have to have the management. For example, a family, okay, group of people, we require management principles to be applied, management functions to be applied. Educational institute or a medical institute or financial institute, everywhere we would require the management functions. And this we said, like management is not very much it is bound to the culture. Okay, there is a little difference in the way it is done, but it is independent of the culture. This approach is also referred to as the universalist approach, okay, because it is applicable to all the places where there is a group of people and resources. The generic term is the resources. Whenever you are having want to handle the resources, management comes into picture. Ideas of Fayol and his followers have come to be criticized as well. So, whatever administrative management, there were some good aspects, as well as there are some bad aspects. Uh, and I told you, with the time, the different one solution or the one management function that was provided during that time would be very effective. Over a time, that function may not become that effective because of the change in the scenario. So continuously there would be change in the scenario. So similarly, the whatever the principles working at one time may not be effective at the later time. So some of the examples are given here. Fayol's principle of division of work or specialization produces the following dysfunctional consequences. Okay, division of work, if you remember, like work should be divided clearly, and we should have a specialization. For each specialization, there would be like experts, okay, or the foremans on those specializations. So what is the problem with that? It leads to the formation of small work groups with norms and goals often at odds. So it will lead to a formation of very small groups related to that specialization or related to that particular division of work. It results in the dissatisfaction of workers because it does not provide them with the opportunity to use all their abilities. Okay, so it will create lot of dissatisfaction, resulting in because there is a lot of dissatisfaction. It will not provide them with the opportunity to use all their ability. Because people are dissatisfied, they will not be able to provide their complete abilities. Whatever the abilities, they will not be able to apply. It results in an increase in the overhead cost, because more specialization develops at one level, the greater becomes the need for the coordination at a higher level. Please hold on 1 second. Guys, are you listening, hearing any background noise, or is it okay? Okay, sure, right?
It's fine now.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm hearing background noise. That's why I just wanted to check with you. Okay.
Say it slightly, like not a lot. It's okay. It's fine.
Okay. 1 second. Hold on. Hello. Is it better now?
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Okay. All right. Okay. So we were looking into that. Um, Next slide. Okay. For many of Fayol's principles, one can find an equally plausible and acceptable contradictory principle, and there is nothing Fayol's writings to indicate which is the proper one to apply. So we went through like all the principles, and among those principles itself, there is a some conflict. That's what this says. There is a problem. Conflict means one principle, he has couple of principles, but one principle contradicts the other one. Example is principle of unity. Okay, sorry, principle of unity of command. Okay, so unity of command, the reporting should be only one. If you remember what is unity of command, each for each person there should be one supervisor who will guide him in his work. That is called unity of work. And the principle of specialization or division of labor. So division of labor or the principle of specialization, it talks about having many specialization. When you have many specialization, you remember like each specialization, each foreman who has that specialization will delegate or will give the work to the that particular employee. So if you see here, the specialization talks about the multiple supervisors, and unity of command talks about a single supervisor. So this is a contradictory. The principle of limited span of control and number of organization level should be kept at a minimum. So these two are contradictory, because principle of limited span of control means there should be a very few people under certain control. Example, he proposed a span of control of 6. A manager should have only 6 people under him. This will contradict with having number of organization level should be kept to minimum. When you want to keep the organization levels less, naturally the number of people under those levels will increase. So this is a contradictory. These principles are based on few case studies only and have not been tested empirically. Indeed, whenever these principles have been tested empirically, they have fallen like autumn leaves. For example, Dale found considerable variation in the span of control of the chief executive, even among highly successful firms, as against the limit of 6 by Arvik. So this is the span of control as specified by Arvik. It should be 6. Even in the top management also, it is not able to consider that. And all these principles were not tested. Okay, they were very few limited studies were carried out for these principles. These principles are often stated as unconditional statements, okay, of what ought to be done in all circumstances when what is needed are conditional principles of management. So most of these things are said unconditional statements, like all these statements are unconditional. There were no provision for any changes, right? So any management principle, it is very hard to give such a solution. It is not like a scientific formula which one formula will work all the time. So it is similar to that. Those principles were like they were unconditional statements. For example, it is not correct to say that the authority and responsibility of employee should be explicitly described in all types of environment, because as shown by Burns and Stoker, in technologically turbulent environment, an employee's job should be as little defined as possible so that it can shape itself according to the changing needs of the situation. Okay, so what it says is like we cannot really completely define 100% the job, so there will be variation as and when he is working on those particular jobs. These principles, namely the principle of specialization, chain of command, unity of direction, and span of control, result into the formation of a mechanistic organization structure which are insensitive to employees' social and psychological needs. So one of the thing, all these principles, they it is more of a like a mechanical structure. So human emotions, like human behaviors, they are not incorporated. That is one biggest drawback. Then Chris Argyris contends that such structures inhibit the employee's self-actualization and accentuate their dependence on superior. So the self-actualization is like how you can relate to in this term is when people are doing certain kind of work, they get a highest level of expertise in that particular work. So with this kind of a administrative management, that self-actualization will not happen. Okay, or it will not promote the employees to towards the self-actualization. They also develop among employees an orientation towards their own particular departments rather than towards the whole organization. Also, it will create a problem like you will be focusing only on your department rather than the whole organization. For example, like if we are working in the computer science department is a part of our organization, but we should be focusing on the our college as well. So it should not be just restricted to the department. These principles are based on the assumption that organizations are closed systems, but this is not so. Organizations are open system, hence the rigid structure which these principles tend to create do not work well under the unstable conditions. So these principles are based on the assumption that all organizations are closed system. What is a closed system is like you get a certain kind of a feedback, and according to that system will get corrected. So you will get a certain kind of a feedback again. Example is you are driving, right? Humans, it's a like a closed system. When you are driving on the road, whenever you see the road is turning, automatically you get that input. Okay, then you will start turning the wheel. So that is a closed system. Open system is like it will not have a feedback. Even though we think like we have a feedback mechanism and all those things, predominantly organizations are open system. Like it's very hard to get the actual or systematic inputs. So hence these principles may not work because the whole basic assumption is like organizations are closed system, but what the management practitioners say, it's a organizations are an open system. Okay, hence the rigid structure which these principles tend to create do not work well. That is why these whatever the structures that have been proposed with this management theory, they may not work well in such organizations. Okay, so we saw like the scientific management, administrative management. Next one is the bureaucracy. This is another management theory that is proposed by Max Weber. He's a German sociologist, is known as a father of a bureaucracy. Max Weber is known as the father of bureaucracy. About 1910, he made a study of different types of business and government organizations and distinguished three basic types of administrations in them. So he done a lot of studies, and he came up with there are three types of administration. One is a leader oriented, second one is a tradition oriented, and third one is a bureaucratic. What is leader oriented? As the name suggests, you understand, it is led by a leader. So leader, and the way his management theory, we call it as a leader oriented administration, is one in which there is no delegation of management function. All employees serve as a loyal subject of a leader. Means there is a one leader, and most of the small enterprises, okay, uh, they initially, when we call them as a startup, mostly it is leader oriented. There is no much management processes will be in place. Every employee will follow the entrepreneur who has started that particular company. Second one is a tradition oriented administration. Managerial positions are handed down from generation to generation. Who you are rather than what you can do becomes a primary criteria for work assignment. So here is a tradition oriented is mostly like family owned businesses. The managerial positions are handed in generation to next generation. It will keep on passing. It The more focus in tradition oriented is like who you are, like how you are related to that administration chain rather than what you can do. So that is a tradition oriented. The next one is the bureaucratic administration. Okay, what is bureaucratic administration? Delegation of management responsibility is based on person's demonstrated ability to hold the position. Okay, it is based on the ability, okay, ability of the person to hold that particular position, not because of the any kind of background, or not because of it's a family oriented business, things like that. So no person can claim the particular position either because of his loyalty to the leader, or because the position has been traditionally held by the members of his family. People earn position because they are presumed to be best capable of filling them. Weber considers this as a last type as the ideal type of administration. So, according to the Weber, in bureaucracy, the bureaucrats, they are the people who are capable of handling those positions. Only they will be selected, not because a certain person has a he follows certain leader, or he has a family background, and he thinks that this kind of a manager or the administration is very helpful, or it is very influential. Important features of bureaucratic administration. There is a insistence on following a standard rules. Okay. Weber believed that the authority in an organization should not be governed by personal preferences of employer, but it should be governed by a standard rules. In other words, institutional cult should replace the personality cult. What it says is like the organization will have the rules and regulation formulated, and there is a, high importance given to following those standard rules. So what it will do is like you will have the institutional rules will be there, and it will cut the personality cult. Means personality cult, when it happens, when you have a very strong leader, okay, when people start following, that is when you will have the personality cult. So by following the standard rules, what it will do is the organizations will be based on those particular rules, not by any personality or any person and any personalities influence. He said that this would provide equality in the treatment of subordinates and continuity and predictability of action. This would also obviate the need for searching ad hoc solutions to problems. So, as we know, like when we have standard rules, it is same for everybody who is working in that organization. So, it will promote the equality in the treatment of the subordinates, and also it will give rise to ad hoc solution to the problem. So whenever you have any kind of a problem, there is a higher chance of getting a ad hoc solutions. There is systematic division of work. This increases the production by improving efficiency and saving time changing over from job to another job. So this will, when we have rules and everything is followed systematically, so division of work will happen. So here he sees the benefits of the division of work. So earlier we saw division of work had other issues. Here what sees is, when we have the division of work, a particular employees, they will be good at doing certain kind of a job, so they can do it repeatedly and they can produce better results rather than changing over the one job to another job. So it will take certain amount of time to relearn the another job. Instead of doing that, we can have the a division of work which will create the experts in particular kind of work. Principle of hierarchy is followed. Each lower officer is under the control and supervision of a higher one. So this is we saw some of the principles they also talked about. uh, Principle of hierarchy. It is necessary for individual to have knowledge of and training in the application of rules, because this forms the basis on which legitimacy is granted to his authority. So we know that bureaucratic administration, each individual should be good at doing what he is doing, uh, because it is based on the his capability. So everybody should be trained well and he should know how to perform his job. Administrative acts, decisions, and rules are recorded in writing. Okay, so you can see like all the whatever the administrative acts are there, whatever the decisions that are taking place, rules, everything is recorded in writing. This makes the organization independent of people, beside making people's understanding more accurate. So even today's like many of these things, they will be recorded. For example, HR. Okay, HR policy, we call it as HR policy. So HR policy, if you want to know what, suppose let's say you want to take a certain amount of leave, let's say 15 days. Okay, so how you can approach that? So you can follow the HR policy. They will have the leave policy. The policy will tell, okay, the policy will tell what you can do or what you cannot do. Okay, so that is one example how the documented way of having the rules. There is rational personal administration. People are selected on the basis of their credentials and merit and are paid according to their position in the hierarchy. Promotions are made systematically. There is emphasis on winning people's loyalty and commitment. So, rational personal administration means HR, human related things. There is a procedure for selection. There is a procedure for increments. There is a procedure for the payment according to their hierarchy. So everything is well systematically documented. Contributions and limitations of bureaucracy. So contributions, bureaucracy can be viewed as the logical extension of management when it becomes impossible for the person to fulfill all the management functions. Okay, so bureaucracy, it seems to be a very logical extension of the management. When one person is sitting in that particular position, how he can fulfill or how he is capable to do that work is a logical extension, how you can implement different management functions. Bureaucracy tells who is capable of doing that. And what is the capability of any manager is how he can get the things done. Okay, using different management functions, or using whatever way he wants to implement, he will use that, but he will make sure that the required work is uh, it is done, okay, according to the requirement. The concept has enabled modern large-scale organization which require functionally specialized staff to train and control the people with heterogeneous backgrounds and to delegate specific responsibilities and functions to them. So uh, basically this has enabled organization to require people having the specialized knowledge, and who can train and control people with the heterogeneous backgrounds. Heterogeneous backgrounds means once you are specialized, you might be having like for example, in case of IT teams, we can have team from different. There might be a one team in sitting in Europe, one team in sitting in Asia, one team sitting in America region. They work together. So even though it is working as a team, the manager is he's having specialized knowledge who can coordinate with this heterogeneous team. Right, the team is having a different background. Limitations. There were a lot of criticism to this theory. Researchers by Merton, Selznick, and Goldner have revealed several dysfunctional consequences of bureaucracy. Okay, so as every management theory, there were advantages and there were disadvantages, and some of these disadvantages were revealed later. Okay, when other management practitioners they come across different scenarios and different challenges. Bennis and Thompson are among the severest critics of bureaucratic organization. Okay, so there are some examples like how why they thought some of the concepts of bureaucratic management were not good. In fact, Weber himself, in his own lifetime, became so much disenchanted with these organizations that he later on began to attack the concept which at one time he had helped to immortalize. So, Weber himself, even though he is father of that principle, uh, because the certain the organization, the way they used this principle, the way it was carried out, later Weber also felt it is not correct, and he started also he was also one of the person who criticized his own concepts. So some are listed here. Important dysfunctional consequences. First one is over conformity to rules. Okay, in a bureaucratic organization, employees observe, stick to rule. Okay, so always, because bureaucratic management gave so much emphasis on rules, over conformity to rule, stick to the rules. Like a rule everywhere, when the work was getting done, the rule became very, very, very important. Because they fear being penalized for the violation of these rules. So always there is a problem. The rules, if they follow, if they don't follow the rules, there will be a penalization. So therefore, they may not do any work which will violate any kind of a rule. So they will try to restrict, or they work in a conservative manner. When rules are very strict, people will start working in a conservative manner. When rules are liberal, they will stretch their limits to do the to get the work done. So they therefore follow only the letter of the law without going into its spirit. For example, doctor in emergency ward spends precious time in filling up various forms before helping the accident victim. So this is one of the example, very nice example. Uh, in case of an emergency, doctor has to pay more attention to the different forms that have been filled or not, all the rules are followed or not, because the reason for this being is like, if there is any litigation, right, the doctor should have all the required procedure that he has done before touching the victim. So this is one example. So doctor will not pay any attention to the victim until all papers, all the rules of admission are followed properly. Okay, violation of rule begets more rules to take care of the violations, because if he violates in order to take care of the victim, if he just doesn't follow the rule, later he will get into more violations of the rule. So that is one problem with this kind of a system. Buck passing. In a bureaucratic organization, the employee initiative is stifled. In situation where there are no rules, employees are afraid of taking decisions independently. Okay, so here what happened will, because of the rules has to be followed. Most of the time, he will not take a decision. Just he will pass on that decision to somebody else. Employees are afraid of taking decisions independently, lest they may be punished for wrong decisions. They therefore either shift decision to others or postpone them. As a result, office work increases and Parkinson's law come into operation because people are afraid. They just if they come across any new scenario, they will pass on. Let us say there is some a little bit inquiry which is not related to his field, but he is capable of giving solution to that, but he will pass on that to the other department which can handle that. This will result in more office work or more non-productive work. Trained incapacity. Okay, in a bureaucratic organization, the training and experience repeated many times over develop in an individual skill and abilities in a specialized area only. The individual find himself incapable to respond appropriately to new situation in other areas. So since we have the people trained in a particular job, they will find very difficulty, they find themselves not capable of doing other kind of work. They should be retrained in other kind of a job. Displacement of goals. This is a very common phenomena in a bureaucratic organization. Goal displacement takes place when organization substitutes for its legitimate goal some other goal for which it was not created. So here displacement of goals means what? Originally the organization is created with certain goals in mind. Okay, and with all these rules and regulation, there is a gradual displacement from the initial goal what it was created for. Okay, after some time, okay, so how the goal displacement can, okay, we talked about the displacement of the goal, how that displacement of the goals can happen. After some time, the leader of an organization may begin to devote more and more of their attention and resources to preserve and maintain the organization itself rather than the initial purpose. So when they focus more on the organization's survival rather than the purpose for which organization was created, so then you will see the shift in the goals. After some time, the employees of organization may so intensively internalize the rules that the goals which these rules were originally framed to achieve are totally forgotten. So because they will internalize means they will focus so much on the rules itself, they will forget why the rule was created, what was the goal behind it. So that will be totally forgotten. The means thus become more important than the ends. So the way they are doing is becomes more important than why they are doing such things, means the goal behind their work. This type of a behavior is called as a professional automation. There can be many examples of this behavior. A stranger enters an office and seeks some information from the employee sitting there, but the employee, instead of supplying him the required information, asks him to follow the rules and go to the inquiry counter. So this is when rules are implemented so strictly, this is what happens. So they gave one example. A certain person comes in and he seeks some information. So even though whether the person knows that information or not, what he will do is, as per the rule, he will direct that person to the inquiry counter. Go to the inquiry counter. That is the starting point of any information that he requires. No real right of appeal. Okay, the client of a bureaucratic organization generally feel dissatisfied because they have no real right of appeal. Superiors very often side with the viewpoint of their subordinates. Right of appeal means what? If there is any kind of a action which he feels he is right, okay, and he wants to appeal, okay, then there is no way to do that. Okay, superiors very often they side with the viewpoint of their subordinates. So the superiors, whatever they think, that will be considered as the way of doing it, and also their subordinates. So the superiors, all the superiors, they feel the same thing, and they support such things. Neglect of informal groups. So in the next class, we will continue with the rest of the limitations, and we will complete this, and then we will start with the neoclassical. Okay, this is all classical management theory. Next is a neoclassical management theory, and then we have the modern management theory. So that will take up in the next class. If you have any questions, you can ask, or we will end the class.